So many people are consumed by their past and living as if the things that happen to them in their life are the reasons why their life isn't going the way they would like it to go today. I'd like to suggest to you that in this principle, which I call giving up your personal history, I'd like to suggest to you that all of that is wonderful to talk about in therapy, and you can get a lot of help literally for going back and examining the things in your past that perhaps are troubling for you. But the illusion is that these are the things or the reasons why your life is not working the way you would like it to work today. That is the illusion. It's the illusion that Alan Watts spoke about when he used the metaphor of the wake of the boat. That the wake of a boat is nothing more than the trail that is left behind. If you stand on the back of a speedboat and watch it, it's a wonderful metaphor. You can get that picture in your head. You can simply see how it is all just a trail that is left behind. And if you ask yourself, what's driving the boat? What's making it go forward? The answer is that what's making it go forward is the present moment energy that is being generated by the engine in this moment, now. And that's the only thing that can make the boat go forward. And the most important question to ask yourself about this little metaphor is it possible for the wake to drive the boat? Can a wake, that is, can a trail that is left behind make a boat go forward? And of course the answer to that is no, and thus it is also true for your life, that the wake of your life is also a trail that is left behind. And this trail that is left behind is just that. It is not what is making you inefficient, poor, unhappy, depressed, stressful, sick, in bad relationships, and so on. Even though we like to think that, and we like to put the responsibility for those things on all of these events that took place in our past, the fact is, the way I look at the past, is that everything that happened to us in the past had to happen in order for us to be where we are today. And the evidence that I have for that is that it did. And there's nothing else to say about it. It did, and it can't be undone. 1,000 years ago, a man named Omar Khayyam, who was a tent maker in the Muslim world, observed, "The moving finger writes, and having writ, moves on. Nor all thy piety nor wit can lure it back to cancel half a line. Nor all thy tears wash out one word of it." He knew that in the Middle Ages. And yet we've got people who are consumed with the belief that because of the way you treated me, because of what you said to me, because of how I was abandoned, because of how I was abused, because of how I was ignored, because of my past, that I lived in this particular set of circumstances or that these are the reasons why my life is not going the way I would like it to go today. And if there's any advice that I think will help you to get onto the extra mile where it's not very crowded, it came to me from a man named Carlos Castaneda, who I was reading something that he had written in a book called The Fire from Within. And he said, "One day, I finally realized that I no longer needed a personal history." He said, "And just like drinking, I gave it up." And he said, that and only that has made all the difference in my life. So that all of these things and all of these events that transpired, that took place up until now, all you can to them is thank you. And I'm talking about all of it. Thank you for abandoning me. Thank you for the abuse. Thank you for the struggles. Thank you for all of it, because it is out of those falls and out of those struggles and all of those difficulties that I generated the energy to propel myself to a higher place. And without those falls, without those struggles, without those difficulties, I wouldn't be able to get to the place I am today. And when we look at what it means to live an inspired life, it's nothing more, in my estimation, it's nothing more than finding a way for you to be in harmony with the spiritual essence from which you originated. Not just in your actions, not just in your feelings, and not just in your behaviors of attending church or being nice once in a while, in every single thought that you have. And I'd like to suggest to you that inspiration is not something that comes and goes. It's not something that you have one moment and then in the next moment it disappears. And this is a whole new look at inspiration. To me, inspiration is living in spirit at all times and catching ourselves when we find ourselves disconnected from the spirit from which all of us emanated. It's really thinking like God. It's being more in touch with that place of origination. It doesn't come and go. When you live an inspired life, you begin to feel as if you're on purpose. I guarantee you that at the end of this show, you will not have to ask the question, what is my purpose, and how do I find it, and where is it, and how come I can't get it, and why does somebody else have it and I don't seem to get it? It always seems to elude me. These will no longer be the issues that face you about being inspired. It's really about living day in and day out from this divine perspective of watching every single thought that we have and catching ourselves when we have a thought that is inconsistent with that divine source from which we all came. So that if you have a thought that includes you and your family, but excludes someone else and their family, no matter where they are in the universe, no matter where they are, no matter what they look like, no matter what side of the river they were born on, no matter what their cultural background might be, if you have a thought that includes some and excludes others at any time, you're not in spirit. You have left spirit and moved into something else, taking on a view of yourself as someone who is separated from your source. So that you watch yourself and you catch yourself, and a big part of this program will be about watching those thoughts. Many of you know that I had a very powerful and important teacher in my life when I was a young doctoral student. He was perhaps the most significant teacher in the professions of my life. He wrote a very important book back in the 1950s called Modern Man in Search of a Soul. His name was Carl Jung, and Carl Jung had others in his life who were students of his, and one of those was Abraham Maslow. And Dr. Maslow's work on self-actualization and higher consciousness and teaching people that if you want to help another human being, you always put your attention on what it is that they can do to improve rather than on what is wrong. So you don't talk about what is missing, what is wrong, what ought to be, what used to be, unless you want more of that to continue flowing into your life. You put your intention and your attention on what it is that you want to shift and change. And he had an observation. Maslow's observation was this. He said, what is necessary? What is necessary to change a person is to change his awareness of himself. So becoming inspired is really about changing your awareness of yourself. And what does this mean? It means shifting the belief systems that you might have, the thoughts that you've had over and over and over again that say, I am limited. I don't have the talent. I don't have the background. I don't have the luck that I need in order to be able to attract what I want into my life. Things have never worked out for me before. You change your awareness of yourself and your own body and what you believe about it. Like, how could you have a body that comes from a divine source that creates from well-being and have it be anything other than beautiful? Have it be anything other than divine? Have it be anything other than perfect? A perfect creation of God, of Source, of Spirit, is what it is that you carry around with you. And if you have any other thoughts about it, then you have to really work at shifting them, because it's an insult to that from which you came. When you trust in yourself, you're trusting in the very wisdom that created you. And inspiration is about having that. It is about recognizing yourself as a genius, recognizing yourself as a person of unlimited talent and the capacity to be able to do anything. And there is absolutely nothing that I can't create if I can conceive of it in my mind and know that if I don't have the talent, that whatever talent is necessary, I can manifest it and have it show up and attract it into my life. Whatever financing is necessary, I have the ability to be able to connect myself to that. It's a knowing, it's a powerful knowing. I'd like to speak in this program about what I call the rewards for inspiration. Things that will be your payoffs, your prizes, if you decide to move into spirit, into this world of spirit that I'm speaking about here on PBS. Back in the 2,300 or so years ago, we're not quite sure exactly when, there was a great teacher in India. His name was Patanjali. And there are 6 of these things, and I want to cover each one of them in this program. He said, when you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all of your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. 3, your consciousness expands in every direction. And 4, you find yourself in a new and a great and a wonderful world. Dormant forces, faculties, and talents come alive. And 6, you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. Those are the rewards. It's not like you're going to win the lottery. It's not, and you may. It's not that somebody's going to come riding into your life on a white horse or whatever. These are the rewards. These are the things that are going to be so powerful for you. All of your thoughts break their bonds. All of your thoughts break their bonds. What do we mean by your bonds? Your bonds are the thoughts that you have that keep you disconnected from your source. They are thoughts that are out of harmony with spirit, with God consciousness, with God realization. Because this is basically about being like God, being like Source, being like Spirit, being like Divine Mind, in everything, in every thought, in every action, more and more, connecting yourself back, catching yourself. So, the bonds are the ways that we think. I'd like you to imagine a ladder. And this ladder has 10 rungs on it, from the floor all the way up to the top of the ladder. And at the top of the ladder is the highest rung. And at the top of the ladder are the words, "This is my desire," and it's aligned with spirit. Again, this is my desire, and it's aligned with spirit. What is your desire? My desire is to manifest abundance into my life. Perfectly aligned. We came from an abundant source. My desire is to feel a sense of well-being in my body at all times. Perfectly aligned. My desire is to have divine spiritual relationships in my life. My desire is to get the job that I am working towards getting. My desire is to live in a place where I feel most peaceful and most loving. My desire is, and these, whatever it is, it doesn't make any difference. It's the 10th rung. It's the highest rung. It is your spirit aligned with your desire. All right? So here it is. It's right up here. Now you have to ask yourself the question, what is it that I offer up to this 10th rung desire? All right? A 10th rung has to have, in order for it to manifest and show up in your life, it has to have thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that match up to that. And if they don't match up, you get out of harmony. See, thoughts are energy. Like everything in the universe, it's energy. Einstein said that nothing happens until something moves. The mistake that most of us make is that we attract what we don't want, because our thoughts are on what we don't want. Or we continue to attract what's missing in our life. We're not at number 10, we're at about number 3. And what are some of these on these lower rungs? It probably won't happen. It's very difficult. These kinds of things have never happened for me before. I don't have this kind of luck. We've got the wrong people in the White House. The economy is bad. I don't have the ability to make it happen. I don't really believe it's possible. It's about what kind of energies we have within ourselves that we offer to what our desires that are aligned with spirit in order for them to manifest.
Your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind begins to transcend the limitations that you've had before in your life, and you stop seeing yourself. You stop seeing yourself as a human being. You begin to see yourself as a spiritual being, as the spiritual essence of who you are. And you literally, Mark, you step outside of your body, and you begin to observe it, and you begin to laugh at all of the folly of it and the foibles of it and the worries that it has, and because you begin to see yourself as an infinite being, not restricted by your birth and by your death and by your height and by your weight and by your looks and all of those and all the things that you've achieved in your life and your acquisitions and all of that. You don't define yourself that way anymore. You let go of those what Patanjali called the false self, the illusionary self, the Maya. That's not who you are. Who you are is that from which you came. And as you get back into that place from which you came, you absolutely know that in harmony with God, all things are possible. I mean, it's right out of the scriptures. With God, all things are possible. Now, I don't know how many people you got on the line, but let me ask every one of you. Now, what does that leave out? It absolutely, literally leaves out nothing. There's no thing at all that is not possible. If you can conceive of it and have that knowing and stay in spirit and do it from that place of passion, and passion is just love. I mean, God is love. I mean, that's also from the scriptures. God is love, and he that believeth in love believeth in me. I mean, love and God are synonymous. God and good are one. They're the same thing. There's no difference between the two of them.
I had a client. His name was Lou Mastriani. He was a client of mine up in New York. And he came to me for 6-7 weeks of therapy. And we worked together, and after that, I just figured it was over. I was what I call a do-do therapist. You got to go out there and do it now. You don't just sit here and talk about your mother. Just not interested. It's just boring. I got enough of that. I got enough problems with my own mother. I don't want to hear about yours, But if you want to change, then here's what we do. And Lou wanted to sort of talk, and then we got to a point where he knew that it was time to go. These are the things that you've come for, and now you can change and work on them. And he was one of these people who was never happy. He didn't understand the great messages, and the great understanding that happiness itself is the way to live life. It isn't something that you're going to ever get. It's something that you bring to life. That success is an inner process. It's something you bring to life. It's not something you get from life. And so in the last day, I told them, I said, Lou, you've always talked to me about how great it was when you were a little boy living out in Sag Harbor, and how much you loved to go out to the beach, and you spend your days at the beach, and those were the greatest things. I said, I'm going to give you 4 prescriptions. And these 4 prescriptions I give you, you have to follow them to the T. He said, all right, Wayne, I'll do whatever you want. He always knew I was a little on the loony side. And Lou was we became buddies. And so I said, you're going to go out I'm going to send you out next Wednesday instead of coming here. You're going to take the day off. He had a furniture business. I said, you're going to close up your business for the day, and you're going out to the beach, and I'm going to give you 4 prescriptions. And the first prescription you're going to open at 9 o'clock in the morning when you get there. The second one you open at noon. The third one at 3, and the last one at 6 o'clock. Will you do it? He said, yeah. I got this from Norman Vincent Peale, who had told me this was a great technique for people who are sort of into that type A stuff and always in a hurry and never wanting to be happy but always wanting to talk about it. So I gave Lou these 4 envelopes and I sealed them and I wrote this in. And he went out he was ready for his day at the beach. He hadn't done it since he was 9 years old. And he opened up the first envelope at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I had written in the envelope inside, I'd written the word, listen. That's all. And for 3 hours he had to walk up and down the beach and just listen. Just listen to the birds, to the ocean, to the wind, to all the beautiful things that the beach has to offer. Just be there in the moment. And he did that for 3 hours. And then at noon he got to the second envelope and I had written in there, reach back. And then there was a poem that I had put on there by James Kavanaugh, which I have in my parenting book on raising kids. It's called Little Boy, I Miss You. God, you guys could listen to this. James Kavanaugh wrote it on his 45th birthday, the day his brother died, who was only a year older than him. Some kind of nervous, crazy disorder. It goes like this. Little boy, I miss you. With your sudden smile and your ignorance of pain, you walked through life and devoured it, with nothing but misty goals to keep you company. You wandered through quiet woods with friends, and you were startled by a shuffling porcupine. Your heart beat mightily when you chased frogs and caught one too big for a single hand. There was no time for meaning. A marshmallow gave it on a sharpened stick. A jackknife in your pocket gave you comfort when your friends were gone. A flower hidden in the woods behind an aging, shriveled log. A dog who licked at your fingers and chewed at your jeans. A game of football that you didn't expect. A glass of cider. A cricket's cry. When did you lose your eyes and ears? When did taste buds cease to tremble? When's this sullenness, this mounting fear, this quarrel with life, demanding meaning? That mounting fear is leisure's bonus, and it's the pain that forbids you to be a boy, be a girl. I had Lou think about that for 3 hours. Reach back, and don't let an old person move in. Don't let a tired person move in. Don't let a sick person move in. Not into this beautiful form that you inherited. And at 3 o'clock I had written on there, as he opened the envelope, re-examine your priorities, which I'd encourage all of you to do. Who are the most important people in your life? Who are they? What would you do if you had 6 months to live and you knew it? How would you spend that time? Who would you be with? You got kids and you don't have time for them because you're too busy? Be with those kids. Teach them how to play ball. You're not raising grass, you're raising kids. Be there for your wife. Tell her how much you love her. Send love out wherever you can, and you'll see the success that you're chasing so desperately come jumping into your life. Re-examine your priorities. Walk as you talk. Be there for the people you love, and you'll see your business and everything else growing. And at 6 o'clock, I had Lou write the final envelope, and I'd encourage all of you to do it. I said, Lou, now write your worries in the sand and see how long they stay there.
If I had a woman from Holland who came over to see me, whose husband had left her after 25 years. She had 4 children, and she just had been on the verge of suicide. And she was losing weight, and she was depressed, and she was taking all kinds of drugs for it, and she was getting sicker and sicker because she just couldn't get over it. And she came to a book signing that I was doing at a bookstore down in Florida. And she said, "You've got to say something to me. You've got to say something to me that will help me to get over this." And I told her this line. I said, "Give up your personal history. Merge yourself here, now, into this moment. And those 25 years are something, if you want to understand how to do it, think of your past as, this hat. And this is your past. Now, you can't just set this thing down over here and walk away from it and give up your personal history, because you'll always have it there to look back at. What you do is you pick up your past and you embrace it. You understand it, you accept it, as I had to go through these things that I had to go through in order for me to get to this place today, and the evidence for that is that I did. You don't need any more evidence. You did. And then you toss it. You toss it. You embrace it, and you toss it. And you merge into the now by giving up your attachment. And some of you have heard me use the metaphor of the wake. Alan Watts talked about the wake is not what drives the boat. The wake is just a trail that is left behind. That's all it is. And so is the wake of your life. And the wake doesn't make the boat go, and neither does the wake of your life, the reason why your life is going in the direction that it is. The wake is a trail that is left behind, and it's an illusion to believe that it is the cause of your suffering or your struggles or your difficulty. Give it up. Let it go. Embrace it, understand it, get help doing that if you must, and then move into the now. Wisdom is avoiding all thoughts which weaken you. You know, every thought has an energy, just like everything else in the universe. And if you have a thought of shame, it will weaken your muscles. And what is your heart but a muscle? If you raise a child who believe in shame and feel ashamed of themselves, every time they think that shameful thought, they will be weakened. And if you have a thought of fear, and if you have a thought of stress, and you have a thought of anguish and anxiety, all of these thoughts and many more are the thoughts that will always weaken you. When you are having a thought that you know is disempowering you, shift it. Shift it to one that is empowering rather than disempowering. And the thoughts that empower are thoughts of neutrality and willingness and love, and ultimately thoughts of divinity. And when you see a troubled person who is out there struggling at the highest level of unity consciousness or God consciousness or spiritual consciousness, you recognize yourself in all that you see. There, but for the grace of God, go I. And I am connected to that person. Changing your thoughts. I appeared on the Tonight Show many years ago, several times, quite a few times. And I remember coming home from the Tonight Show, and I was walking along the beach, and they had taped the show the night before, and I was out for a walk, and a woman who lived in the Northeast stopped me, and she said, "Didn't I see you last night on it? How could you be here?" I said, "Well, I flew the red eye, and I was walking along." She said, "You know, we're moving down here." She said, "What are the people like here? What's it like?" And I said to her, "Well, what are they like where you live?" She said, I live in a very big city." And she said, "They're very pushy. And people are not very kind. And they don't have time for you." And she said, "It's really not very pleasant." She said, "That's one of the reasons I'm leaving there." I said, "Well, that's pretty much what you're going to find here." That's basically what the people are like here. On the way back on the same day, someone else who had seen me the night before on the Tonight Show, who had lived in the Midwest, stopped me and asked me almost the same question. She said, "You live here?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, my husband and I are moving here and we're looking for a school." She said, "What are the people like here? What's it like here?" I said, what are they like in Chicago where you live? She said, it's the Midwest. She said, people are very friendly. They're open. They open their homes to you. They're very loving. They're very kind. She said, it's a wonderful place. She said, I love that. I'm going to really miss that. I said, that's pretty much what you're going to find here. It's what you expect. It's what you think about that expands. It's what Emerson taught us. The ancestor to every action is a thought. Change your thoughts and you change your world. Change your expectations and you change around what you begin to manifest and see showing up in your life.
Choosing to experience peace by focusing on what you are for. You can experience peace by balancing all that transpires around you with God consciousness. There's nothing that requires you to react to evil doing with a non-spiritual mental response. You have a choice to put your mental energy into what you desire, and in so doing, create a new world. Let me tell you how I choose to respond to the bombardment of messages that focus on what's wrong in the world. First, I remind myself that for every act of evil, there are a million acts of kindness. I choose to believe that people are essentially good, and that by staying in this belief system, I help bring more of this consciousness to fruition. When enough of us take on this notion, we'll learn to live collectively in this peaceful awareness. Secondly, I know for certain that no amount of hatred in my heart will ever bring about peace. Hatred will only contribute more to the presence of those human-made destructive energies. So I choose to place my attention on what I am for, and on my feeling good. I support peace, not war. As Albert Einstein once remarked, I am not only a pacifist, but a militant pacifist. Nothing will end war unless the people themselves refuse to go to war. Unquote. I, as a recipient of the Einstein Award from the Albert Einstein College of Medicine of Yeshiva University, would humbly add, and unless people refuse to ever think warlike thoughts. In Long Walk to Freedom, Nelson Mandela wrote, to make peace with an enemy, one must work with that enemy, and that enemy becomes one's partner. I know that we are all partners with each other. This is how I think, and when I see footage of a world that's in disarray, because many have forgotten this, I still choose to know that we'll ultimately learn to live this way collectively. But it begins with each of us refusing to be instruments of non-peace in all of our thoughts, and consequently, all of our behaviors. Adolf Hitler's designated successor, Hermann Göring, is quoted in Nuremberg Diary as saying, "Why, of course the people don't want war. But after all, it's the leaders of the country who determine the policy, and it's always a simple matter to drag the people along, whether it's a democracy or a fascist dictatorship or a parliament or a communist dictatorship. Voice or no voice, the people can always be brought to the bidding of the leaders. That is easy. All you have to do is tell them that they're being attacked and denounce the pacifists for lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same way in any country." That was Hermann Göring. I choose not to be one of those people who are dragged along. I refuse to be brought to the bidding of any leader who attempts to convince me that my beliefs in peace make me unpatriotic. When an unidentified Pentagon official was asked why the U.S. military censored graphic footage from the Gulf War, he responded, "If we let people see that kind of thing, there would never again be any war." Well, that's my goal, to live in a world where warlike thoughts are impossible because we're placing all of our mental energy on what we are for rather than on what we hate. Former President Dwight Eisenhower, who was also a commander of the Allies in World War II, once remarked, "Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies, in the final sense, a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children. This is not a way of life at all in any true sense." This is a call to get ourselves and our world in balance. Peace demands heroic thinking and a purity of conscience. Third, when I see and hear evil, I remind myself, I didn't sign up to come here to be a part of hatred. While others obviously have, I'll remember to stay with the inner sense of peace that calls to me, and I'll surround those who behave in evil ways with the same light energy. I simply refuse to go to war in my thoughts. I choose to be a beacon of light for the places of darkness that are bereft of this kind of illuminating energy. Finally, as the dispatches of violence continue to come my way, I remind myself over and over again that we have a choice in how we respond to all of this. I know that by feeling hateful in response to hate, I only contribute to the presence of hatred in the world. As an ancient Chinese proverb tells us, quote, if you decide to pursue revenge, you'd better dig 2 graves, unquote. I know that I have a choice to see what's good about the world rather than what has gone wrong. When those communiques of violence and hatred come streaming toward me, I push the mute button or even the off button, and I recall what the Dalai Lama once said. Quote, compassion and love are not mere luxuries. As the source of both inner and outer peace, they are fundamental to the continued survival of our species, unquote. Those are extremely valuable words describing our need to be in balance. I stay balanced on this dimension of being in a peaceful world by saying them over and over and over again. I now know for certain that I'm obliged to stay in a consciousness of compassion and love, not only to maintain my own balance, but to help ensure the continued survival of our species. There can be no greater calling.
The purpose of dancing at a dance floor is not to get to someplace else on the dance floor. Your purpose isn't to end up over here, like this is where we're going to end up. So all of this other stuff is irrelevant. Our purpose is to get here. We don't do that. When we dance, we enjoy every single step of the dance, all of the music. And wherever we end up is where we end up. It's just like enjoying a concert. I mean, the purpose of enjoying the concert isn't to get to the end. If that was the case, then the people who conducted the fastest would be the best. And people who wrote only finales would be considered geniuses. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, that was fantastic. You see? It's like peeling a banana. You know, the purpose isn't to get to the other end. It's to enjoy every bite. And the same with life. If we, self-actualizing, fully functioning, highly spiritual people, the great teachers are people who didn't do what they did because they were going to make money off of it, because they were going to be approved of, because it was going to be enduring. They did it because it was what their heart told them they had to do. They have no investment in power or control over others. Their life is not about who I'm better than. See, true nobility is not about being better than somebody else. Everybody's better than somebody else at something and not as good as somebody else at something else. True nobility is about being better than you used to be. It's about growing in your life. That's what nobility is. And highly functioning people they're not looking into other people's lives. The last line of Candide, Voltaire's great novel, this whole story of this wanderer, Candide, this great teacher and sort of comic person. The last line, I guess we'll have to learn to cultivate our own garden. Cultivate your own garden. If other people want to grow rutabagas and you want to grow cabbage, then allow that and be independent of that. But so many people live their lives through what others are doing, how well they're doing it. Fully functioning people let go of that. That they have incredibly high energy and enthusiasm. Enthusiasm, entheos, the God within. When people say to me, what makes a great speaker? I said, be authentic and be enthusiastic. And it doesn't matter what your content is. People will love you if you're authentic and enthusiastic. If they can see the God within you. If they have no concept of failure. There's no such thing. If you take a golf ball and you put it up on a tee and you stand there and you swing at the golf ball and it dribbles off to the side, you haven't failed. You've produced a result. The question is, what do you do with the results you produce? Everything that you do produces a result. You can call it failure and say, well, I'm not good at this, I've never been very athletic, and apply all kinds of labels to yourself. But we should never, ever allow ourselves to think of ourselves as failures, nor should we ever place that label on anybody else, because you can't fail. It's just a judgment. The only difference between a flower and a weed is a judgment. It's just a judgment. And the difference between success and failure is just a judgment. You know, Edison, the great inventor, of course. You know, when asked the question, he had tried 25,000 different ways to invent a battery, and he still didn't have it. And finally someone said to him, how does it feel, someone of your stature, to have failed 25,000 times? He said, failed? I don't know anything about failing. He said, today I know 25,000 ways not to make a battery. What do you know? And every time you do something, every time you go, and it doesn't work, you learn something. And the question isn't whether you failed, it's what do I do with the results I produce? If you pick the golf tee ball up and put it back on there and say, all right, I'm going to correct that, and you do it again and again and again, eventually, if you go through the 4 pathways, if you practice the discipline and the wisdom and the unconditional love, eventually, when you surrender, you'll know how to hit a golf ball. But you'll never do it the moment you label yourself to be a failure.